right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still continuing the State of the Nation discussion. In fact, now let's move on to a different conversation. We're keeping an eye on the Kiambaa by-elections, by the way. We'll touch base with the reporters on the ground, Elfas Lagat and Stephen Leto. They're covering the entire place wall to wall for you. There are 96,000 registered voters there in 154 polling stations, opened at exactly 6 a.m. No incidences have been reported yet. Security is tight in the area. There's been a slight low voter turnout, but it is still too early to tell. At 6 a.m., there are just a few voters trickling in Muguga and the larger Kiambaa constituency as well. But now, before we get into that, let's talk about the IEBC and referendum tender raising eyebrows. This is a conversation that was also in our news story earlier on. The Electoral Commission has stoked controversy with a public notice on a tender for the supply of election materials, including referendum result declaration forms. Now, that is where the rubber meets the road. And Governor Mutua, start us off on this one. What do you read into this? Are they simply just getting ready for the referendum should it come, or is this preempting the outcome of the BBI appeal, like what people are saying here?
Well, before I even touch on that, let me just finish. I know you want us to move quickly on some of the things that Senator Chirangai, I hold you in very high esteem. And I liked your explanation about why the Deputy President cannot retire because he's tied in the umbilical cord with the President. But what about you, as a leader? Msimamo. Can you take a stand as a young person with charisma, a young politician who believes in democracy, to say, I am in Jubilee, but I'm resigning to run in UDA to prove to the world that UDA is popular even where I come from? So, you know, you've been running around the country to other places, campaigning for UDA politicians. Why don't you campaign for yourself? Why did you take that stand? Because, you know, it's important for us, younger generation, to be people of msimamo. That's why, you know, I take a stand, I stand there. And it should be good, because now you'll be saying, I am moving on a fact of ideology. I'm not just worried about my comfort, the money I'm getting, that comfort. So it's something. It's a challenge I'm throwing. You don't have to reply, but think about it and what message that would send to Kenyan politics. Because we want reality. You talk about tekel, you know, many tekel Perez, you know, the writing is on the wall of the party you are in. Then why are you still in that party? I'm just talking from being from neutral, you know. I don't care either way, whether Jubilee or UDA, I don't care. But just from a neutrality and as a leader in this country. This bottom-up approach and the talk about politics. I remember when I did my master's on diffusion and fusion theories and the Bretton Woods institutions and how they would come here and tell us you need to copy this and do this and all that. I'm seeing the same, you know. These are people who are looking for slogans to basically incite people feeling that you're the one. What is important in this country is the provision of basic services. And the role of government is not to give people money. The role of government is to empower economic growth. You know, in the US, they have the trickle-down, you know, economics of Ronald Reagan and others. And it's good for leaders to study world economics and understand what makes people grow, the consumer factors and all that, the difference between development and growth. Yeah. You know, growth, you can say we are growing, you've poured money, you're growing, but the cost of living is also climbing, so there's no growth. Development is permanent, it's things that you can touch and see when people feel comfortable, when you've got disposable income, such that on the weekend you can take your wife or you can take your husband and your children to Machakos People's Park and sit there na mchome nyama no kona kagari kako. You have disposable income. Ama uende kanisani utoe more money than you could have given ya fungo la 10 because you've got disposable income. That's where you're coming to. And even hii mambo ya kanisa. You know, we talk about social welfare and what happens. In the US today, if you lose your job, they have a social welfare system of an employment benefit. They have it in Australia. They are of Centrelink. They have it in Canada. So that if you lose your job, you actually get money every month, you know, 50, 60, 70,000 to help you survive as you look for new work, as long as you're showing that you can look for work. You know, they are cushions that cushion our people. It's social welfare. Yeah. But they don't give money in churches. Why? Because the thinking is this. You take a church. I went to Ghana, as I said, and in Ghana and other places, you find a beautiful church. Here in Kenya too. Beautiful castle of a church surrounded by shanties. Church has been built with harambes and shanties. Whereas in the West, what they do, They have good churches, but those churches are built by the people who live around them because they also have good homes. So let everybody grow richer. So the fungu la kumi is enough to build a church without a special harambe from a politician who's gotten the money in questionable ways, as people would say. So it's not about giving, and we want to grow. In Machakos, I've decided I don't want to go to harambes for churches. I don't go. So what I've done in this budget, I have put money for social welfare for churches in my budget, so that now churches can apply to me and say, Governor, we want to do a roof in Machakos. And they compete, we give them 50,000, 100,000, a million, 2 million shillings. So the churches in Machakos can benefit from the taxes that people pay, so they can grow, and so that people don't have to, they don't have to be beholden to politicians bribing them. So the state takes care of them. And that happens in Australia. That happens in Canada. That happens in many parts of the world, whereby the churches are funded. Coming now to IBC, I have no problem with what IBC have done. I think it's forward thinking. Because you have to plan ahead. What if the courts said, let there be a referendum? And what if, you know, there was a sitting in Parliament and they moved the election to, say, December, and so there is room to hold an election, a referendum. So what then? You have to plan ahead. The problem we have in these countries, we don't plan ahead. We know kutakuwa na kiangazi, kutakuwa na mvua, so instead of sourcing for food while it's cheap, distributing for food to different places, we wait until people are starving, so hiyo ndio tunaamka, ndio tunakimbiza chakula, people are dying. We know that it's going to rain, El Nino is coming. Instead of opening the drainages, fixing the roads, controlling traffic, we wait until it's here. When there's Madogodani everywhere, that's when we're running last minute. So I want to say that what IBC is doing is just thinking ahead. Let them plan ahead, because we want to be sure that IBC will carry out a fair elections. As a presidential candidate, I want to have a fair election from a team that is thinking beyond the normal spaces. I want them thinking, you know, outside the box, per se, so we can be able to go forward.
Honorable Wanga, what do you think about the IBC? Is this preparing ahead of time, or is there something sinister here?
No, I don't see anything sinister. I think IBC must prepare, and you know, procurement of election materials was a big point even in the last election, and who, you know, who's bringing the materials and in what period, and security of those materials, because there were people, you know, like there was a very big debate around Al Ghurair, you remember, and so on. So I think let them put it out there, and it's a 3-year contract. And by the way, I'm hopeful that, personally, I'm hopeful that the courts will rule in favor of letting the BBI proceed, in which case there will be need to have a referendum, and therefore the IBC should be ready by that time. So Trevor, I think there couldn't be anything sinister. I mean, if the courts say there is no referendum, there'll be no referendum. I mean, but if the courts agree with the BBI proponents, like myself included, we should be able to proceed, and it shouldn't be that at that time there's no preparation, or the fact that you know, procurement again takes a long time and so on. So framework contracting is allowed. Many people make 3, 2, 4, 5-year framework contracts where you have suppliers who you can call on to bring in items whenever you need. So nothing to worry about.
Cherargei, is that your same reading as well?
Just before I respond to that, there are sweeping statements that my colleagues have made. One is on taxation. And I think as the chair of finance, Mheshimiwa Gladys Wanga should be honest to Kenyans, that despite what she's saying on record, Kenyans continue to suffer under heavy taxation. And I know it could be beyond her, because, of course, the ballooning public debt and many others. We saw the increase of fuel yesterday was being stalled for at least 1 month, but it is a challenge that as a country we are facing with. But she has a duty, since she's now part of the government, chairing one of the critical committee that was being chaired by the government side. She has an obligation to do her job and ensure that the taxes don't continue to rise, and discuss with the executive, because under the handshake, ODM is technically in government, and I think her and the party leader of ODM should advise President Uhuru Kenyatta on how they can bring taxation and ensure Kenyans don't continue to suffer. Secondly, there is this sweeping statement of just saying, you know, the country has been looted, some individuals are looting the country. But the question is, where is the DCI and EACC? If somebody, the president at one point said you can visit Karura Forest. If somebody is aware that there is a corruption somewhere, then they should be able to report these incidences to EACC and other investigating organs so that these matters can be investigated. As leaders, we owe this country a fidelity to rule of law. We owe this country, if there are issues of corruption and somebody is aware and they are not reporting and no one is being prosecuted, then it is not very in good taste to be always making sweeping statements saying the country is being looted. We know who is looting the country. We know who is giving such and such amount of money. Why don't you report to the DCI or nearest police station? And these individuals, as a leader, I would be interested to know who they are. They need to be prosecuted. They need to face force of law, because EACC and other agencies are being funded by the taxpayers' money. So we cannot be sitting year in and year out saying the country is being looted. Why don't we know who is looting? We know who is giving money and what have you. So I think we should be honest with Kenyans. If there is any looting of public funds, and any leader knows, including here on set, they should be able to share with relevant agencies and ensure those individuals are being brought to book. Now, secondly, on the issue of IEBC, I had a privilege of chairing JLAC for 3 years, and at that point, it was just immediately after 2017. And there were two issues that I'm seeing IEBC are still struggling with. One was funding. IEBC should be continually funded, and it is on the purview of National Assembly, because they are the one making the budget. Then when we used to meet with IEBC, you know, we should, I have seen people blaming IEBC saying they should have a continuous voting. You know, it was one of the submission key during the Court of Appeal hearing, where there should be continuous registration of voters, there should be continuous functions of IEBC. But are you aware that IEBC, for the first time around 4 years, they were being allocated at least 14 billion, and yet they wanted 40 billion. And in fact, they are now in discussion with Treasury on how they can get proper funding. So sometimes the systemic errors and functionalities that is facing IEBC is not because IEBC does not have capacity. It is because National Assembly has failed for the last 4 years to allocate enough sufficient resources to allow IEBC to function. Yeah. Number two, on IEBC also, is that there was also an infighting. You remember when Ezra Chiloba, the CEO, now we have Marjan, who is the acting CEO. We have a fight between the CEO and the chairperson of IEBC. I remember then when as a committee, we did write to President Uhuru Kenyatta to appoint the 4 resigned commissioners. And at least now the interviews are ongoing. We are seeing being interviewed potential Kenyans. And I hope in fullness of time, we should have a fully constituted. You remember the Kriegler report? It suggested that 2 things are, we have staggered commissioners to ensure we retain institutional memory. And then they had proposed, I think, 24 months, or is it 12 months, before a general election, we should have IEBC commission. We have failed in living to Kriegler report recommendations. Number 3, and finally, is that I don't have a problem with tender being given out. You know, if you know procurement, and my sister being chair of finance, she's well versed with this, the procurement laws and even the governor, it takes a bit longer. So if you understand how procurement laws operate in Kenya, you would appreciate what IEBC is doing. They need to put these things out, because and I've seen, I don't know where Tuali has gone nowadays. I saw him last time, he was saying the general elections could be postponed. But IEBC, working with Article 102 of the Constitution 2010 of Kenya, they are aware in August, 2nd Tuesday of 5th year, in 2022, there is an election. Yeah. And therefore, I agree that IEBC should have an early preparation, considering the procurement laws. On the issue of whether referendum will not be, I don't agree with them that they are preempting the Court of Appeal. I don't know. How will they know the outcome of the appeal that is in Court of Appeal? Yeah. You have seen the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Speaker of Honorable Wanga, as Speaker Justin Muturi, has been even on the record that it's not practicable to do a referendum. From where I sit, it is not practical unless there is, and I have said in this show, I remember Senator Kimani Wamatangi and my brother here, Governor Mutua, was saying we are doing rumor-mongering. It shows that there is some sinister move to postpone 2022 general elections. Because if you see this advertisement of referendum, and yet it is not even practicable to do a referendum and a general election at the same time, because one, will be risking the issue of economy, which is already in ICU. Number two, it will be subjecting Kenyans to an election campaign mood for far too long, which is not good for the country. And therefore, from where I sit, it looks like the schemers of who want to move general election beyond August, an extension, is still alive. And you know, when some people just make a sweeping statement and say, you know, we can move the election, it is not cast on stone, we can just do referendum, we can do referendum and then do an election. So from where I sit, of course, as an ordinary Kenyan, it would be, why would IBC, if you're advertising for issues of referendum, yet they don't know the outcome of the Court of Appeal ruling?
But I thought you just said you don't have a problem with the preparation.
No, on the other issue of preparation for general elections materials, like the ballot papers, but when they added the issue of referendum, that is where it is shocking, because which referendum would IBC want to do? Or they want to do a referendum based on other things that we are, or the cold season that we are experiencing in Nairobi? Because why would you be procuring something that you don't need? It is like buying anything in life that you don't need. So from where I sit, I don't have a problem with acquisition or in preparation for ballot papers meant for general elections. But where everybody's attention has been drawn is where they're advertising specifically for referendum. And yet in the near future, there is no any other referendum except the one that the BBI proponents wanted to appeal. So from where I sit, which intention and why would they want to do referendum on?
Okay. Honorable Wanga, there's a question that he posed to you when you talked about the looting of the country. If you have any evidence, why don't you take it to DCI?
Well, I think Cherargei knows what we are talking about, and there are several corruption cases and that people seem to know something about. And in fact, it is them who should be helping us to unravel these issues. For example, the Aror and Kimwarar. When the DCI said that, 20 billion was lost, or 21, it was the deputy president who immediately came and said, no, it's only 7. So he should tell us 7 billion. He should tell us about the 7 billion. The deputy president should tell us about the 7 billion. The very DCI he's telling us to go to is the DCI that they wake up every day and throw barbs at. You know, they fight the DCI. Whenever the DCI is trying to do his work and catch up with them, they throw, because the country must trust its institutions. But what Udaku and Senator Cherargei and the whole group, when they meet in Karen, what they do, like the other 2 weeks ago, the whole press conference was about how the DCI is this, the DCI is the other, the DCI is not doing this, the DCI is not doing that. Then he comes and sits here and tells us that, you should go to the DCI. The very DCI they are throwing barbs at, the very DCI they are saying is incompetent, the very DCI they are saying is political. That very hypocrisy I talked about at the beginning, that is where it is.
Okay, Governor Mutua. I guess Wanga is not taking any prisoners this morning.
I think a lot has been said about the IBC, and I think we can let it rest, because he's made his point, we've made our points, and we move on. I think at the end of the day, the whole issue and the excitement of IBC is about free and fair elections. Okay. And we want to be in a country where you believe that once you vote and you finish voting, that your vote will be counted and will be a legal vote. We need to have a system whereby people who transgress electoral laws are not allowed to compete. And the message needs to be very, very strong about it. But there's something I'd like to talk about. We need to put ourselves in a new room, a new format of thinking about our country. I don't know that it's time to do our closing remarks yet.
Not yet. In fact, we have one quick topic on the University of Nairobi, then we'll close.
Yeah, but even as we think about our politics in our country, what can we do to calm the what do you call it, the temperatures. As we said, in the United States, you can campaign up to the door. Mtu anaweza ingia unampatia pamphlet, nipigie mtu wangu. You can campaign on the line. In most countries, hapa unaambiwa 2 days before you cannot campaign. Because we get too emotional, we get too violent. And it's cocky, you can get emotional, you can talk to people, but you don't have to become violent. We saw the Kibra by elections, watu wengine walinyang'anywa kofia, wengine walichapwa, wakatolewa suruali. You know, elections too, na hata si yako mwenyewe, it's for another party, and we get too involved in elections, and we get too involved in this campaigning and then being driven in tribal lines, you know, and that's where we suffer. Let me ask you, Trevor, as you go. As I said, I was speaking to some young people yesterday, and we were talking about the aspects of tribalism and being hardened towards tribalism. And it's an example I've used before, but I would like to use it again before Kenyans to actually get it, because I'm very passionate about this. Imagine umegongwa na gari, or your mother, or your father, or your wife, or your loved one, your husband, mtoto wako mdogo unampenda amegongwa na gari, tumbo imepasuka, amepelekwa hospitali, amelala hapo, and they are dying, or you are dying. Halafu uambiwe hapa kuna daktari ambaye atakutibu. There is a surgeon, an expert surgeon, the only one who can shona you upone usikufe, or shona your child, huyu mtoto wako umelea, anakutanga baba, mama, anakufa mbele yako, ameshika matumbo, umeshika matumbo yake na mkono, apelekwe. When that child is being taken to the theater, will you stop them and say, hey, wachana ngo, hey, bika, huyo daktari ni Mjaluo kama mimi, huyo daktari ni Mluya kama mimi, huyo daktari ni Mkamba kama mimi, huyo daktari ni Mkikuyu kama mimi, ni Mluya, ni Mkisii, ni Mtaita kama mimi. You will not care. You wouldn't even care hata huyo daktari angekuwa ni green ama yellow, you know, or whatever. You don't care because you want them to survive. And our country has reached a place whereby we can say, economically over the years, we're in a place where we're in ICU. And we need the best doctor for surgery to get us where we are. Not based on tribal lines, not based on kingpins, not based on competition and not being loyal and pushing. We want a good solution for ourselves. It's time Kenyans became selfish. Sema, who is good for me? Wacha na kabila, wacha nini, who is good for me and my people and my community. Ndio tusonge mbele. Otherwise, and that's why we need a very strong IBC that delivers the vote of the people, or what the people want. And that's what Kenyans are craving for.
All right. Let's take some feedback and then take a quick break. When we come back, we talk about the University of Nairobi. There's been a bit of an arrest there. They say they're going to protest every Wednesday. This is about the fee increment, but the giant institution is getting to their knees pretty much. The VC himself said that they've been living beyond their means. But for now, let's take some quick feedback and see what you're saying. Bring them up and see on Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak to bring that up on your screen right now before we get into that. Jacob Abere says, Kiambaa by election today is a litmus test for voters choosing between policy promises, emotions, and stomach interest. Okay. Abdirahman Ali says, political parties are formed to win elections in Kenya. When one is dissatisfied with his or her political party, they get emotional and jump to form new parties. It's unfortunate that some politicians have taken voters for a ride. Let us think big and God bless Kenya. Okay. Okelo Mwalimu says, in politics, development record of an individual alone isn't an enough qualification for election or re-election. You need charisma, propaganda, and the ability to whip up emotions of the electorate. Okay. Rapando Franklin says, that's very true, Mheshimiwa. Once they win elections, they forget manifestos. That's forgetting Mwananchi. Okay. Mzee Makosh says it is wrong for the mountain to monopolize presidency. We also have valleys, plains, plateaus, and even beaches that can produce presidents. Okay. Amsletati says it doesn't matter from which region the president is coming. We already regret the looting by government, corruption in government tenders, and incompetence in addressing key economic issues. All right. I am Benito says, having a Kikuyu doesn't change the fact that I'm hustling like a Luo in Kano Plains. They do not add value to our lifestyle. What we need is not a tribal leader, but a visionary leader who will change the lives of the common Wanjiku. All right. Still another one here. You call yourself Original Kenyan. You say the perspective should be on the ability of parties to seek political positions everywhere, irrespective of the position of the perceived regional kingpin. Kipleting says corruption in Kenya has been weaponized and politicized. Okay. All right. We have another one here. Journalist Alan, the last one says, I wish the Kiambaa people a peaceful election. Brilliant. Let's take a quick break now. When we come back, we talk about the University of Nairobi really quick. And then we cross over to Kiambaa, where the by-elections have already kicked off. All right, see you in a bit.